The one thing that I noticed truly, and it was pretty much about a week into it, was
Hmm.
that I was sleeping because we did sleep studies, we did PTSD, anxiety, Beck
Right.
depression, the Beck anxiety, the GAD-7,
Hmm.
the PQM-9, the
Hmm.
PCL-5, all of those standard tests. We did them several times while I was down there, and
Hmm.
those were trending better right away. And it wasn't because, oh, there was nothing to do down there.
Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Goel from Peak Human Labs, and today I have an amazing guest for you, Dr. Joseph Dituri. Dr. Dituri is a retired Navy SEAL diver after 28 years, and then he's also a scientist and researcher in the field of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Now, a really interesting thing that Dr. Dituri did last year was he stayed 100 days under the ocean, 24 feet under the ocean, and it showed a remarkable number of health benefits, including reversing his age by 10 years. So today we're going to talk with him, learn all about that, the benefits of hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and I hope you really get something out of this. We'll see you on the other side. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Doc.
So, I reached out to you. I heard about, I think maybe in the past year, the dive you did, and you spent 100 days under the ocean, and that was really, really interesting to me. I was reading about it that time when you were doing it. It just so happens that I'm also, just started a hyperbaric oxygen therapy clinic here in the Toronto area, and and when you came out, I heard some reports about the effect of the underwater experience having on your biologic age. So I was obviously have a longevity practice as well. So this became very interesting. So I really do appreciate you taking the time today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's great. It's great to be able to pass this information on.
Yeah, that's awesome. So maybe before our viewers could get into that, do you mind just taking us a little bit background about why did you get involved in this space? Was it really hyperbaric that was interesting to you, or the marine biology, or how did you get into this field?
So before any of this started, I was a Navy
Mm-hmm.
diver, Navy Special Operations Officer for 28 years. So that whole time I was active duty and I was looking at the diving in the underwater realm and thinking it was cool. So I was doing that. I became somewhat of a submersible expert. And when I retired, I got a call from James Cameron's people. And James Cameron's people are like, hey, listen, Jim wants you to come out to the house. I'm like, Jim who? Like James Cameron. I'm like, to
Mm-hmm.
James Cameron's house. Yeah, okay. So I go out to his house and I see the submersible that he
Yeah.
has in the back of in his garage, basically, that he went to the bottom of the
Yeah.
Marianas Trench with. Well, when he goes to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, he finds a sea lice. Now, sea lice in Florida usually are little teeny tiny creatures, but underwater they're about 11 inches big. Holy mackerel! He
Right.
captures it,
Right.
pulls it
Wow.
back,
Okay. Yeah.
pull a DNA sample on it. Turns out to be a
Yeah.
partial cure for Alzheimer's.
Okay.
And I
Interesting.
went, holy mackerel,
Hmm.
we need to live in the ocean because everything we need is on this planet. I mean, think about that. A partial cure for a disease that afflicts humanity was living at the bottom of the Marianas Trench and nobody knew about it.
So, okay, let's just dive right into that then, because I mean, people heard about hyperbaric being treated for multiple conditions. We've kind of known that, but I want to make this talk a little bit more interesting about what really makes your experience more special is this what happened with your 100 days underwater. So maybe
Right.
just take us through that. Like, why did you decide to do that, and was it because of this thinking that it might have some benefit on your body?
100%. So it was three main reasons.
Yeah.
First of which, I have a PhD in biomedical engineering, so I wanted to do biomedical research on people in a isolated, confined, extreme environment, and I was the only
Mm-hmm.
person that would do it, so I did it. And then I wanted to talk about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to kids so that they can learn that you can be a scientist and do cool underwater research. And then I wanted to all my friends in the scientific world about preserving, protecting, and rejuvenating the marine environment. But
Mm-hmm.
all that stems around the fact that this was a hyper, meaning more than, baric, meaning pressure, environment. And we knew the mechanism of action of hyperbaric medicine. So a lot of the known MOAs we absolutely expected. Some of the things that happened we didn't expect, but a lot of them, like, lengthening telomeres. Like we knew reverse transcriptase was one of the known mechanism of action. Great study done, lots of great work's been done recently. So,
Okay, and so for our viewers out there, like you were how many feet were you? 100 feet underneath the water?
no, 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 no. I was 20, 24 feet
Oh,
underwater.
24. Okay,
Yep.
24
And
feet.
I stayed there
And
for
yeah.
100 days.
And for how many atmospheres does that equal? Like if one was to do a
1.7.
1.7. Okay. All right. So that wow, it's surprising how fast in just 24 feet one how much the
Exactly.
atmospheres increases. That's interesting. So we had seen that research done by the Israeli researchers showing that I think people who had done I don't know almost daily treatments for 3 months had shown some 5 or 10% increase in the telomere length. Is that what you're referring to about the research on telomeres?
Yeah, so Shea Efrati did that research, a great researcher from Israel. I work with his team here. His team is up in the villages, so they're about an hour north of me. I work with
Mm-hmm.
his team on traumatic brain injury as well. Terrific research, anywhere between 17% longer and 30% longer, depends
Oh
on whose
wow,
paper you read, depends. I mean, that's a pretty significant amount, right?
that's
So
huge.
while
That
I
is.
was underwater, I had a 17% increase in my telomere length. That's
Wow.
pretty substantial.
No, that's hugely substantial. And does it? I mean, this was done. The telomere measurement was done at any commercial laboratory, or like where was it done? Just so our viewers may ask.
Yeah,
Maybe
all,
because I don't
all
know.
the stuff had to be done at a laboratory in Canada, I think. I
Oh,
can't
what
remember
was
to be
that?
honest
That's
with you,
called.
but
I forgot with the R. It starts with an R. I forget what
it's that one that everybody sends their stuff to
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
it's really,
exactly,
and
exactly.
yep,
Yes.
has to be frozen, has to be cryo frozen. It's crazy. Yeah.
I think repeat diagnostics. Maybe I have to take a look at that. Yeah.
That rings
Okay.
a bell. I honestly can't
Yeah.
remember.
And then what about the the other impacts? So was the decrease in biologic age looking at telomeres, or did you do some epigenetic clock? A look at that.
And we did epigenetic slides, right? So I went in the
Yeah.
water. So I am 56 right now. I went
Yeah.
in the water, and prior to going in, my epigenetic age was 44, and that's
Mm-hmm.
because you spell Jim with a G, and
Yeah.
as opposed to a J. You work
Mm.
out, you eat clean, you
Yeah.
eat right, you sleep. All that
Yeah.
helps with your epigenetic age.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I came out of water, my epigenetic age was 34. So it's
Oh wow.
pretty profound. I mean, that is a 10-year shift off an already shifted 10-year baseline.
Yeah,
Pretty
you already have a
substantial.
pretty good result, which is pretty impressive. So which company did that? Like that epigenetic clock, or how? What test was that?
It wasn't the same company. It was a company that basically did. So we blot the entire thing and circle it, and it's one of these like epigenetic tests that are. There were several epigenetic tests that were done,
Oh,
and I don't remember the company's name. I honest to God, I can't remember it right
okay.
now.
No, no problem. And so they obviously this was all confirmed by various epigenetic clocks. And then I read somewhere also that there was also changes in your immune markers. I guess these are the cytokines like IL
Yeah, so
6 or IL-11
that's
or
that's one of the things that we use as a primary driver to indicate like inflammatory markers, either pro or anti-inflammatory cytokines. TNF alpha, TNF bravo,
Mhm.
all of those had some really profound changes. But realistically, the most profound stuff for me, the good stuff, if you will, is a decrease in every single inflammatory marker in my body by half. I mean,
Wow.
that's pretty encouraging, right? That combined with the increased telomere length, okay, great. I had an increase in stem cells, and we know that
Mhm.
hyperbaric oxygen induces the proliferation of stem cells, specifically
Mhm.
CD34 plus progenitor stem cells. So you
Mhm.
think to yourself, oh, you can get that in hyperbaric medicine. Now, normal treatment in hyperbaric medicine is 1.75 to anywhere as high as 2.8, 3.0 being human tolerance max, as you probably well know. But
Mhm.
if we're somebody down at 1.75, we can expect to get 2 to 3 times more stem cell proliferation. So that's a pretty profound thing. We need it.
do you think that that the length of time? I mean, what do you think is the minimum amount of time that's required for these effects to happen? So, I mean, you were obviously there 24/7 for 100
Yeah.
days, and these Israeli researchers had it, I think, 5 times a week or something like that.
Yep.
What do you think
Five
is?
times a week, and it's basically 3 whole months. They took
Yeah.
a month, took a little bit of time off in the meantime. But yeah,
Hmm.
so I have not seen a study that suggests that telomeres could be lengthened by X time in a shorter period of time than that. However, it stands logic reasoning. That's just the
Yeah,
way that
maybe
it
you get a.
goes. It works.
Yeah, there's probably a
So
curve,
the
like a.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some sort of a curve. And I have seen personally that after about 2 weeks, the inflammatory markers start decreasing. It's not statistically significant like it is at the very end of my 100 days, but the slight reduction in inflammatory response, you're talking about that cytokine storm, that systemic inflammatory response. If you
Hmm.
can quell that, the body can then start to heal itself because that inflammatory process is, as
Hmm.
you well know, I mean,
Hmm.
it's tantamount to killing people all over the world just from the way that they eat. They're getting inflamed.
Hmm.
Just from the way that they do things, they're getting inflamed.
Right. Yeah, no, makes sense. So, just describe to us. Did you notice any of these feelings when you were there, like that you're feeling better, had more energy, like anything like that?
The one thing that I noticed truly, and it was pretty much about a week into it, was
Hmm.
that I was sleeping because we did sleep studies, we did PTSD, anxiety, Beck
Right.
depression, the Beck anxiety, the GAD-7, the
Hmm.
PQM-9, the
Hmm.
PCL-5, all of those standard tests. We did them several times while I was down there, and
Hmm.
those were trending better right away. And it wasn't because, there was nothing to do down there. I
Yeah, you had a
wasn't.
very
I wasn't.
stress-free life.
No, you would think that. So I taught biomedical engineering at the University of South Florida online. So that was about 2 to 3 hours a day, almost every day, not Fridays, not
Hmm.
Saturdays, Sundays. So
Hmm.
Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, I had off of that. But I did about, 6 to 8 hours worth of science a day, hooking up EEG leads to your head, doing cardiac checks, pulmonary function tests,
Wow.
echocardiograms, electroencephalogram, lots of testing that was done. So 6 to 8 hours a day, 2 to 3 hours of outreach every day. And then from about halfway on, I was doing media interviews that were
Hmm.
like 2 to 3 hours of
Hmm.
sitting, waiting, call. So like, man, I was stemping and fenching. I was really moving, and it was a lot more stress than my normal job. I'm a clinical researcher. My
Hmm.
job is a brain, right? Not while I was underwater. No way.
Yeah, I heard that your REM sleep improved. Is that right? Like when you did the sleep studies, you were able to show that.
That was the thing. So I doubled my deep and REM sleep. So I
Wow.
went from, 2 to 3 hours of deep and REM per night. That's
Hmm.
great. That's about
Hmm.
33%. That's
Hmm.
terrific.
Hmm.
66%. I doubled
Hmm.
it. I would sleep almost 6 hours in deep and
Hmm.
REM, five plus hours in deep and REM. Who
Hmm.
sleeps
Hmm.
like that?
Right.
Nobody. But then you heal, right? Then you learn. So my mental acuity, I had about a 5% increase in coherence and a 7% decrease in phase lag. So it wasn't
Hmm.
statistically significant, but
Hmm.
when you're doing EEGs, you can actually measure the connection speed in your head,
Hmm.
and it winds up that I was getting better. But I can feel myself anecdotally. I
Hmm.
felt amazing. I was Johnny on the spot. I was like coming up with answers. I'm talking with astronauts. I'm talking with marine scientists, which I'm not a marine scientist, but I was picking up what they're saying really
Hmm.
easily.
Right. 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 So you said you noticed improved sleep, and you also had, I think, improved blood parameters like cholesterol, and your blood pressure was also lower. Is that correct?
Blood pressure wasn't statistically significantly lower. However, you are correct that for instance, cortisol took a
Hmm.
marked dive. It went from reasonably high to relatively low. And when you have a drop like that in cortisol,
Hmm.
cortisol best being highest in the morning, as you well know, you have a sharp spike in testosterone, which I I got to be the lucky recipient of, right? So that sharp spike in testosterone actually stayed even when I got out and has remained high up till today. But it just goes to show that the body wants to rate itself. It really does want to make itself better. So if you can help it along, your goal is not to stay in hyperbaric medicine for a long period of time. It's just
Mhm.
to get that little help that you needed and then continue making the right things that you want. So yeah, like I said, there were a couple other ones that were pretty good drops, but those went up. But the testosterone that wound up staying peaked at a reasonably high level for a 55-year-old male for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. So now it's been a year, right? Just over a year that that you came back up from there, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. And so what happened to the changes since then? Like how much of those changes have remained, or have you reverted back to the way you were before?
I think I celebrated just a little bit too much, and the liver function tests went back up. So
Okay.
that's just the way that it is. But
Hmm.
like I said, largely I tried to keep everything the same. Those went back up. My inflammatory markers went back up only because I was exposed to normal everyday stuff that I was normally doing that was, probably not quite as good as I should have been. So
Hmm.
that kind of stuff did retake itself, reclaim itself. The testosterone, the thing that remained well. The cortisol came back up. So I think everything else pretty much came back up. Now the epigenetic changes, those are still incredible. I'm still in the 40s. It's a little older. It's 47, I think, right now. But we kind of ran out of money testing, because as you know, those epigenetic tests are not cheap. And this got funded out of the International Bank of Joe. So,
Sounds good. So the epigenetic changes remained, and what about telomere testing? Have you had that repeated?
I have not had the telemesting repeated only because, as you know, that is really, really
Yes,
expensive. I only
that's
program for that little amount, but
right, right, right. That makes sense. So, I mean, what do you think the implications? I mean, I was surprised. How come there's not much more talk about this? Because this is, to me, spend so much money and all this stuff that's supposed to like reverse your aging or even stop it or whatever. And here we have, which seems relatively simple treatment, that's not going to have any side effects, and it has such a huge
yeah.
impact. That why do you think that the message hasn't got out there, and what do you think take the meaning from this?
So the known mechanism of action
Hmm.
for hyper have been proliferated. They are everywhere. Everybody who's in HBO knows them.
Hmm.
The problem that we have is that there's a group of people who are kind of sort of keeping it in a box, right? Because they're worried about the payment criteria. Now, I don't care what CMS says, right?
Hmm.
It doesn't matter to me whether your insurance company covers it or not. The question is, does the mechanism work? Yes, it does.
Hmm.
Anti-inflammatory? Yes, it does. And if you use inflammatory drops, well, then think about it. And this is med school, right? So I'll teach these kids this in med school. Look at the mechanism of action, apply
Hmm.
it across a broad spectrum of diseases that we have. Crohn's, ulcerative, disease of inflammation. I could reduce the inflammatory markers. That is a reduction in inflammation, reduction in systemic inflammatory response.
Hmm. Hmm.
It can help, but
Yeah.
it's not a drug. I mean, it is a drug according to the US pharmacopoeia, but
Yeah.
it's a naturally occurring element. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Exactly. No. What do you think is going to be the? I mean, I thought the other takeaway would be that you know, I mean, could we potentially design people living more in that type of environment, or do you think that's really too far fetched science fiction?
I think that's a little more science fiction-y because I think I'm at the end of human tolerance. The testing that I did with respect to oxygen buildup and pulmonary oxygen toxicity, reduction in vital capacity, that was being experienced towards the end of 90 something days. And then it continued as I got out. So there were some bad things that happened, right? But this is all science. So I don't think that we can live in the ocean for long periods of time, 100 days maybe. But that's not the thing. We can get most of this from hyperbaric medicine.
Got it.
You just have to deal the cards the right way. And look, you and I both know you're an HBO, you get it. It is a naturopathic cure. And what I see is in the industry, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a PhD, but I see a shift away from traditional medical care and pharmacological solutions to more holistic. And I hate that word because it sounds woo woo, black magic, witchcraft. But it's not. These mechanisms of action have been instilled in the resolve of the medical community for years. I mean, the first hyperbaric treatment was in the mid 1600s. This is almost 400 years old, guys. This is not a new science, right? So we know it's just taken a while to come around. It's cost prohibitive to get into. I think I paid, $250,000 to set up my facility because, you buy chambers at $100,000 a piece and then fill out the oxygen. And, it's not cheap, but, now people that are out there trying to fix toenail fungus with this, I have not seen any positive correlation to toenail fungus being fixed in a hyperbaric chamber. It's not going to cure your gout. It's not going to cure your, there are things that just we know it has no effect or has little to no effect, certainly not statistically significant. But for the things we know, for the no-kid mechanism of action, for the growth factor relief, for instance, release. I mean, angiogenesis, neurogenesis, mitogenesis, known mechanism of action, right? Stem cell proliferation, reduced cytokine activity, decreased bubble size, hyperoxygenation, reducing lipid peroxidation, vasoconstriction. There are many of them. Antibiotic synergy being one of them. So as an adjunct therapy or as a primary modality, I believe that the world is going to come through, that there's going to be hyperbaric facilities out there and they'll wind up treating you, and it may or may not work for what ails you. But if you follow no kidding science, you can see the mechanism of action and apply them, and you'll be standing on solid ground.
What for you yourself? How often are you getting into a chamber now? Like, do you get a chance to do that much anymore?
Well, the thing is, everybody wants to know how much I update. So that's the thought process of a lesser drug model. I think to myself, I got what I got. I don't need to go in there. Now, I happen to have partially torn my my long bicep, so I have a partial thickness tear. Okay, no problem. Time to go back in and selling that. That's the only reason I'm getting in, not upkeep or anything like that. I was working out pretty hard and I tore my bicep. It happens. So I'm hoping to heal faster. And we all know that there's about a 40% reduction in healing time. Plastic surgery has seen that and shown it time and time and time again.
What do you think about the mechanism of action of increased, basically higher pressure oxygen seems to release these stem cells, anti-inflammatory aspect as well. What do you think about this idea about this hypoxia gradient, this constant, just a shift back and forth, may have a lot of health benefits too?
Sure. So the Nobel Prize was given out in 2019 for the discovery of HIF-1 alpha, hypoxic-inducing factor. And basically, we believe, still early, we believe that is closely correlated to the production of derived neurotropic factor. So as HIF-1 alpha goes up, so does your brain-derived neurotropic factor, which leads to the lawn seed for the brain, if you will, which leads to synaptic pathway restoration and production, if you will. You got to do it the right way, and it all has to work well. But yeah, there's some really good stuff going on again, off again, on again, off again. There's some great stuff and great ability there.
Wow. Okay. What's the
data
next?
Is preliminary, as you well know.
What's the next 12 months looking for you? Like, what are you working on? What's your, what's the next steps?
Thank you. Yeah, I was, the whole time I was working on this isolated, confined, extreme environment. And the reason being is because Elon keeps saying we're going to Mars. And I keep going, well, I have a question. Well, it's going to take 200 days to get there. And I was in an isolated, confined, extreme environment for 100 days. Now, fast forward to the International Space Station. All those cats are muscle deprived and bone deprived because osteoblast, osteoclast production changes. You're not using your muscles, so you have disuse problems. While I was underwater, I found a technology for increasing muscle size in a zero gravity environment, only doing it with resistance band weight. So what I did was I came out and I flew that on the zero gravity machine, the vomit comet, if you will. And what I intend to do is prove it in space. I'm just looking for a ride. If you know somebody that wants to give me a ride.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So you're basically, because if anything, the aging effects would be increased as people go up into space, right? With astronauts, because
100%.
you would think they would have the opposite effect of hyperbaric in effect.
So this is the thing, and I've been since I got out. If we can travel in a hyperoxic state, it
That's a good point.
improves osteoblast production, which build bone. And you become osteoporotic when you're in space because you're losing that impact. So it improves osteoblast production, it reduces or it increases telomere, and it gives you all of these decreases in inflammatory markers. Why are we not traveling to Mars in a hyperbaric state? 200 days on the International Space Station gets you a hand carried ride off the rocket because you can't walk. Who's going to carry us when we get to Mars, Elon? Right? Like, I have so many questions. What are we going to eat? What are we going to drink? But who's going to carry us is the question. And we can,
Yeah.
yeah, everybody's like, oh, it's really easy. We'll just make a centrifuge and do artificial gravity. I'm like, yeah, we've been in space for a minute now and we haven't developed that yet. So
Yeah.
movies are, far off,
Wow.
let's just say.
That's very interesting. I never thought of that, but I think it's an incredible learning from your work. So I think that could definitely have a major impact.
Just
Thank
tell
you so
NASA
much.
I applied this year.
Did you already? Okay, yeah, you should get it.
I did. I applied, and we'll make it through the rounds. But yeah, I mean, they got to know this stuff by now. They got to at least know the preliminary evidence that we found, so we can do something and maybe do some oxygen while we're up there. And you know,
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
you're welcome, sir. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Dr. Joseph Dituri. We learned all about his time under the ocean and the incredible effects on his metabolism, his aging, his sleep. This is really some pretty amazing, groundbreaking research and really talks about the benefits of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So, if you like this video, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.